Welcome to the Decanted podcast. I'm your host, Rick Craig. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite growing regions in California, Santa Barbara. The Santa Rita Hills, the Santa Maria Valley, Santa Ynez, and we're particularly lucky today to have the wines of Liquid Farm. So Liquid Farm is the brainchild of founder and CEO Jeff Nelson, who created these wines out of passion. He's doing something really different than everybody else is doing, so I can't wait to introduce him. Going to pour ourselves a little glass. And then we're going to sit down and enjoy the conversation with Jeff Nelson.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it.
Hey, Jeff. Good to see you, man.
Great to see you, Rick.
So I like to start all of these off by asking the same question. You know, what did you have for dinner last night? What did you drink with it?
Great question. I was actually in LA last night. I live, like you mentioned, in Santa Barbara, and so I was in LA. Love to go to my favorite sushi place, Uzumaki in Culver City, And I brought a bottle of our Liquid Farm Brut Rosé, Extra Brut Rosé, champagne, which went very well with their fish, and they also have a great filet mignon on there too, which paired very well. It was definitely Burgundy, and it was actually Bouchard Périfi, who I ended up working for, and it was the L'Enfant Jésus, the baby Jesus.
Jésus, the baby Jesus.
Baby Jesus.
One of my favorites.
That was one of my first bottle of Burgundy I ever purchased in probably 1990, 1993, which was very affordable back then, or maybe not on my school budget.
It's all kind of relative.
Yeah, relative, exactly. But the real bottle that got me was Latache 78, and that really kind of made me really think more about wine besides the first introduction. But working for Clicquot really got me more into wine. I started to study more of it just because it was more of a serious company I was working for.
Right. And so you were in wholesale for how long?
I was in wholesale only for about 2 years.
Okay.
And I worked for a Young's Market Company in Northern California, in the chain department, and realized that's something I don't want to do very fast. The broad market would have been great, but I wasn't able to work my way in there just because there was a lot of seniority. So I ended up going to a importer and supplier, Brown-Forman, actually, was my first gig, and I was in the wine division there. They own Jack Daniels, as a lot of people know. So I worked with Corbel sparkling wine, which was a real treat, and a bunch of other.
And the fact that they can still put champagne on the label is pretty crazy, right? You know,
it is.
The U.S. didn't sign the Treaty of Versailles.
Something went wrong there, big time, and screwed everything.
Yeah.
Like Chablis in a box.
Exactly, right?
Everything goes down south from there.
Yeah.
But yes, Brown-Forman really taught me more the corporate side of things, and whereas Clicquot really taught me how to market and how to really look at wine at a different level, not just a commodity, but more something that people obviously seek out.
Right. So you spent a lot of time on this. Let's talk about the genesis of Liquid Farm. How did that come about for you?
Yeah, Liquid Farm was happenstance. Everything kind of, came together at the same time in some ways. I was looking to be entrepreneurial. I was looking to maybe do a little bit of importing and doing kind of what I was used to doing, which was bringing brands into the U.S. and selling them in the U.S. But decided to go on the production route through some friends that had a winery in the area, Dragonet Cellars, and Brandon Sparks Gillis was one of my mentors, and so I had the name Liquid Farm. I met them actually when they were working at Wally's in the late 90s, early 2000s. They were at Wally's wine store in West LA, and they pushed me to the production side. They started theirs in 2005, and I started my winery in 2009. So that was really kind of the catalyst. I had the name Liquid Farm, liquid from farming. It was just something that really, rang true to what wine's all about. It's all about place. It's about farming.
Right.
And the closest area to get to Burgundy, in my opinion, was the Santa Rita Hills. So that was 2 hours away from LA. So not too far, and I was able to, be here and work with Brandon as a mentor and learn a lot.
And you got to meet James as well.
You got to meet James. So yeah, so James, who's my head winemaker, we both got trained by Brandon, and Brandon and James are actually brother-in-laws. So James is Brandon's married to James's sister. So that's how I got to know James. James started pretty much the same time I started the project, 2009. So he kind of babysat ours as Brandon kind of mentored both of us through the process. Right. My background in Burgundy is what lent to the project, and that's really what I was trying to emulate was Burgundy, white Burgundy. I ate local in LA, but never drank local wines in California. I sought after, probably like yourself, more old world wines.
Right.
And so that really was the catalyst to try to produce something that rivaled more old world. We know we're not Burgundy, but I think Chardonnay from this area, from Santa Rita Hills, is really the closest we can get to Burgundy in North America.
Right.
For lots of reasons.
I mean, that was kind of my next question was why Chardonnay? You know, everybody else wants to grow Cabernet, wants to grow Pinot Noir, wants to grow, you know, why Chardonnay?
Well, that's true. There's a lot of egos in being close to Napa growing up. Obviously, Cabernet's the king out there. But, you know, ego was not something that was on my to-do list for the winery, or I would use my last name, which is not that exciting. But it's not an ego project. So, you know,
I think Nelson is taken too.
Yeah, Nelson. Yeah, Nelson. Yeah, my dad didn't have any vineyards either. So I reminded him of that when I released the wine that we don't own any vineyards. So that's why it's not called Nelson Vineyards. But it was really based upon, you know, Sideways made the Santa Rita Hills very famous with Pinot Noir. We wanted to do, basically, I wanted to do Chardonnay only. I drank mostly and still drink mostly white wine, just because of the foods that I eat, and the climate that we're in is more Mediterranean, so it's harder to have a Cabernet or a heavier wine every night. Pinot Noir became famous in the area because of Sideways, but in reality, Chardonnay is really the king and queen of all of the varietals that are grown in Santa Rita Hills, which is only about 4 different varietals roughly. And Chardonnay was the focus for about 6 years until we made Pinot Noir.
Right.
So we were Chardonnay only. We were very unique.
Right. And not only are you unique in that way, you're unique in the way you're making the wines. So in a time where everybody was trying to tote single vineyard wines and one wine from one place, you did something totally different, whereas you're blending your wines for a style as opposed for a site.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize, you know, you coming from this background, you understand it. Most people won't probably pick up on it for another couple of years, I hope. But basically, the goal was to kind of, it all happened by happenstance. So I started with 4 barrels in 2009. Started with 1 vineyard, it was a brand new vineyard, Kessler Hawk, in the Santa Rita Hills. We could not get in the year before because the economy was doing so well. 2009, the economy changed. We were able to get into a new vineyard. And basically, we had 4 barrels from 1 vineyard, 1 pick, October 5th, nothing different. Brandon and I did the pick. Nothing was different in the winery, all neutral barrels, but 2 barrels decided to go leaner on their own, and 2 went a little richer on their own. So there were 2 different styles within the same pick, neutral French oak, nothing different in the winery. So I decided to break those 2 off. 2 reminded me more of Chablis, the other 2 reminded me more of Meursault. So that's what we came up with, White Hill and Golden Slope. We've got White Hill in the glass here, which is more Chablisian in style. What we decided to do from there is to blend, and the blending from there is to create that style. So it's very similar to my Champagne days as far as creating a house style of blending. So the true art in Champagne is the house style, and that's the blend of many different lots to get that style that's kind of year in and year out. Also, the other thing for us was we didn't want to be beholden to a vineyard owner, since we don't own any vineyards and probably won't anytime soon. But we ultimately didn't want to be beholden to one owner. If we lost that vineyard or the prices went up too high, then our brand was pretty much kapoots. So that was the reason.
Right. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about your vineyard partners. Like, who are some of the vineyards that you work with? And, let's talk a little bit about the Santa Rita Hills. I think it's an area that doesn't get enough credit for what it's doing. I feel like Santa Barbara could possibly become one of the most important winemaking regions in California, just because I feel like Napa has priced itself out a little bit, and Sonoma is kind of so big it doesn't really have any sense of itself. But yet I feel like Santa Barbara, and in particular Santa Rita Hills, really has a sense of who they are and the wines they're making and the Chardonnays and the Pinots that are coming from there.
Well, we hope nobody figures it out. That's the key, because when they do figure it out, then the prices go up, and then the region gets ruined. And as of late, we've had Constellation come in and buy up Sea Smoke, which is a sad day, because we lost one of the vineyards that we really love in the area, Rita's Crown, that we've been working with since 2010. We were one of the first to work with them. And so this year, I don't think we're going to have the access to it. So, in reality, we'd like to keep it small and keep the prices where they should be. But the area is very unique. It's more like Sonoma or Burgundy. It's not, Napa has these big, chateaus like Bordeaux, big Cabernet. People have big egos. And in reality, people aren't drinking big wines as much anymore, just because the foods, as I mentioned before, the food selection that people are going for tend to be a little bit lighter, and plus you can drink more. Ours are low alcohol, so they go down a lot easier. So the Santa Rita Hills is very important, and it's very important because there's no mountain range. The mountain range actually runs east-west on the coast.
Which is the only one in the United States.
I think it's the only one in the United States, and maybe one of 4 or 5 in the world.
Right.
Yeah. So most mountain ranges will run north-south on the coast. This is actually east-west. So the Pacific Plate met maybe 12 million years or so ago and pushed everything inward. And so you've got 2 valleys, really. You've got the North Valley and the South Valley. The La Purísima Hills, you have the Santa Rita Hills in the middle, and then you have the Santa Rosa Mountains on the south side, which then connect into Santa Barbara. What that did when the Pacific Plate met and pushed all the mountain range east-west, it also pushed up a lot of soils. And a lot of these soils that you see in the area, the diatomaceous earth, really is something that is super special out of the area.
Right.
And it's all diatoms.
Yeah.
So these are basically single-celled microorganisms that photosynthesize. So they're very, very unique. They give off about 30% of the world's oxygen, these guys. They live in fresh body and salt body of water, and they're silica-based, and these basically are just their skeletal remains. So we use it in toothpaste for the abrasion, so it's hair products. It's great for ants in a garden because they don't want to go over it because it'll cut them, basically. Fleas on an animal.
So which vineyard is this?
This is actually Radiant, Bent Rock, sorry. Bent Rock, yeah.
So I was going to say, you're working with our friends from the Hilt.
Yes, the Hilt.
With Bent Rock and Radiant.
Yeah, we love those guys. We've been working with Radiant before they bought that, and Bent Rock. So since 2010, CalPERS, actually, the retirement group here in the California government, owned Bent Rock and Radiant, and we were working with them from 2010. So right at the start, basically, year end.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about the label. I mean, I always find it to be such an intriguing label, and people ask me all the time, what is it? What is it? What is it? Obviously, I know the story, so I know what to tell them, but...
Yeah, the original label looks pretty similar to this. It just doesn't have the flower in there, and the coloring, but it's almost pretty similar. I was looking for something with a dandelion in it because I love dandelions, because you can make wine out of dandelion. I guess I'm sure it's not very it's not very tasty. A lot of sugar. Also, you can eat the leaves of dandelions. They're very medicinal. But more importantly, the dandelion root is a very detoxifying tea that I use to detoxify your kidney and liver. So my whole goal was to try to have something on the label that justified detoxification. This is obviously not a dandelion. It's more of a kohlrabi or beetroot. But then we found the artist out of the UK and wanted to use her, be authentic with it, and had her drawing a dandelion that I had growing in one of my plants in my yard. And so it's basically above ground, below ground, and it's just something a little more earthy. This could be the world as well. Initially, it was going to be liquid from farming from around the world,
right,
which actually really has happened since we produce a champagne in France, in Les Menil-sur-Oger, which is the probably the top village in the area. We produce a Grand Cru Blanc de Blanc and now a Grand Cru Rosé. From 8% of the fruit is from Boozy, which is Grand
So
Cru.
you're making actual champagne, right?
Actual champagne, yes. We're lucky enough to have some of my connections from my Clicquot days. One of the winemakers there is now the cellar master at Renart, and hooked me up with a small family, and very small. They're like second generation, I believe. They're not really exported to the U.S., so we spent a few days in their wine cellar just kind of going through and working with what we like to drink. And Petois Morisset is the producer. Great Sicilian Vincent came out and visited us. Never been to the West Coast before, and we took him up to Radian and had them walk through the soils of, basically the diatomaceous earth.
It's like pumice.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Moon dust. Yeah,
exactly.
So it's very, very honored to be, that the French feel that our wine is up to par for them to want to work with us.
Right. That's fantastic. And you're also making a little bit of Pinot Noir now as well. So how many years into it were you before you started making Pinot Noir?
Well, we said we'd never make a red wine, but then there was a lot of nevers in my situation. But won't go down that road. But we got offered some Radian fruit in 2014. And also Huber, when the Hubers were around. And so we decided to make a small amount. We made 3 barrels in 2014. We made a little bit more in 2015. Now we probably make maybe 1,000 cases total. But we work with some of the great people in the area: Sanford and Benedict, Radian, Spear Vineyard, All Organic, Pally,
right?
Fiddlesticks.
Yeah. Fiddlesticks now, yeah.
Fiddlesticks now, yeah. Clos Pepe for Chardonnay. We've got the lock on that vineyard. We've had a 10-year plus contract with those guys. I feel very honored to work with Steve Pepe's fruit. We're, people now, when they build a vineyard or create a vineyard, they sometimes will come to us and ask us ahead of time if we're willing to, be part of their program.
Right. And then how do you determine that? Do you taste wines from other producers from those vineyards to see if they fit the style of what you do?
No, probably not.
Am I overthinking this a little bit?
No. I think that's a good way to go. But I think how we make the wine is very, very Burgundian and very, very pure in lots of ways. So we look for vineyards that have a little more strife. Hillside we like vineyards. We don't necessarily like the flat vineyards because they can tend to hold a lot of water and be a little more unctuous and a little more body than we like, and fruit-wise. But we tend to pick pretty early. So it's really the art of winemaking is picking. And so James, myself, mostly James, has got it down. When to pick, when that acid level, the fruit level, everything is kind of in balance there. Because if you pick wrong, then it's an experiment in the winery, and we don't do experiments. So we did screw up some wine one year, and we sold it off to natural winemaking or something. So and it wasn't very good. So it must be good in the natural wine side. But we are very good. We are completely natural here. The only thing we do is a slight filtration of the wines. Everything else is completely natural. We're very clean, so very cleanly. So winemaking is all about cleaning. It's about 75% is probably about cleaning.
Well, when you're having wines that you want to be precise, it helps to be clean.
Yes.
About it, because then it's not precise if it's not when it gets all muddied up. What's your production now? Total production?
We're about 4,000 cases.
And any plans to grow from there, or is that kind of going to be the sweet spot moving forward?
The gray hair is getting more. So
I feel you, my friend.
Yeah, it's 4,000 to 5,000 cases is kind of where we're at. We've been up as high as the 6,500 cases before, but 4,500 is a good. The 5,000 is a good mark for us. So that's where we'll stay. If you make a jump from 5,000, you got to go to 15,000. There's really no middle room here for production, and you have to ramp up all your sales and everything. It's just me out in the market. We are in about 6 countries, which is kind of fun. I'll be in London this month for work. But we're in Japan, we're in Sweden, Denmark, Germany, hopefully this year. But yeah, it's kind of fun. So so it's not really trying to increase production. It's just trying to get more people to find us in an organic way.
And so where do you see the future? Like, where do you see Liquid Farm in 10 years?
I see it about right here.
Okay.
Yeah. Me getting younger and
Little Benjamin Button effect.
exactly.
Going on.
Yeah, a little reversal action and.
That'd be nice. You figure that out. Let me know.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying. I think we all are. That's where the wine comes into effect. But yeah, to be honest with you, right where we're at is we've got a good spot where we're at, and we just hope to hang on with being a smaller producer in a bigger world these days.
Any plans to make any other varietals branching out from there? Maybe some Chenin Blanc or something. I can see you doing that.
The passion for me really is white wine, and it really is Chardonnay. Burgundy is really my thing. I can't love Burgundy any more than I do. I just love it so much. I do love a lot of white wine, so maybe up in Friuli, potentially Italy, or I got a good friend of mine who had a Pope in the family in Tuscany, and so
moving forward with this, making other wines and other
that's probably where it would.
Yeah,
that's probably where it would go, because the cost of doing things actually is a lot less expensive when you have it in the generations. Plus, they own a Pope, or they had a Pope in the family, so he's a prince. He's a very, very good friend of mine, and so the cost of doing things is a lot easier than here. So that's hence why we make champagne over there, which is amazing quality. We did make a great sparkling here in 2021, but the cost of doing it is not so prohibitive down the road.
Nice. So there's a big announcement obviously coming out later this afternoon. What is kind of your take on the current state of, without getting too political about this, because this is never going to be a political show, because I hate politics, but it does stand to possibly affect our industry immensely.
Yeah, politics are, I stay out of politics too. I go right down the middle. Common sense politics. But
I think that's where most of us are.
Yeah, that's where we should be. But it's a very good question. And in the last go around, Italy was not affected by that, which gave Italy a big advantage in the U.S. They didn't have the 25% tariff as France did. I don't think 200% is going to happen. I think he'll go to 25%, but I think he'll put a hold on that 25%, and it won't happen.
But even 25% is devastating to retailers, right?
It is,
who run on such smaller margins. And I think the other thing that people really don't understand is that affects, everybody wants to say, oh, well, it's going to be a big boom for domestic wineries. Then that's actually not the case, because as you were just mentioning, the future that you're trying to do is to spread to other countries, to spread to other, get your wine out there so people know it. And so it ends up hurting U.S. distributors or U.S. wineries, because they're not able to get their product out, because everybody's not going to buy it because they have tariffs too. So
well, it already has. Our Germany order got put on hold, unfortunately, but which was a big order, brand new country for us. Yes. Also, what it does too is it takes the manpower out of the distributors. So now distributors will have to lay off people. And then that means less access for my wine, and it's going to crumble the entire industry. So if it will crumble it over time, and the bigger guys will be the ones that will be able to withstand the tariff, and the smaller importers and distributors won't. So yes, it is just consolidation and a transfer of wealth that we don't want to see.
Right. Okay. Well, on a happier note, you're a Santa Barbara guy. You live in Santa Barbara. Like, what are some of your other favorite wineries among your friends? Obviously Dragonet we've already talked about, but I know Chambers has several producers there. Who else's wines do you like to drink besides yours?
Well, I'll have to stick with the Chambers wines.
You don't have to. It's fine to talk about
okay.
other wineries. This is not a Chambers podcast.
Yeah, to be honest, which I shouldn't be, but that's me, I guess. I tend to not drink a lot of California wine to begin with. And if I was to drink one producer in the area, it would be Tyler, for sure.
Yeah.
We're aligned in lots of ways.
Philosophically with Justin, yeah.
Yeah, we're aligned.
Yeah.
And I do respect what they're doing there, respect him, respect the wines. That is about it. Maybe Tatimer in some ways. He produces some Riesling and some other things. Hilt does a great job with a lot of stuff, so I do like them. I do like Hirsch up in Sonoma. I think she does a great job up there. Pei Andy Pay does a good job.
I'm sure you wouldn't be
Sandy.
upset at any of Ted Lemon's wines either.
And
so.
and Ted, Mr. Lemon, who I respect and done a lot of events with, since we are in the alphabet with Literati and Liquid Farm, we've been posted up next to each other.
Next to each other.
In pursuit of balance, and love his wines. And he's got a great philosophy. And so I mean we're lucky to have some great wines, obviously, in California.
Right.
I tend to drink my wines probably almost 90% of the times, and that's the reason why I started the winery. I find a lot of winemakers don't drink their own wines for some reason, which I find odd. But the only reason to do the winery and champagne is all selfish reasons.
Well, right. It's a passion project for you. So you want to make wines that you want to drink. And if you're making wines that you want to drink, then why wouldn't you drink those wines?
Exactly. I didn't come from money, so I came all 401k money, all dumped in. This is not I wish I was a wealthy guy at the start, because it takes, I guess, what do they say? It takes 10 million to make a million in the wine industry.
Yeah, pretty much these days.
Maybe more now.
And certainly in Napa or somewhere else. So I mean, I think you did get in Santa Barbara when it was still reasonable. I think, like you said, that could end up being a problem in the future. But
blending, thank goodness that we have the blending option. So if we lose a vineyard, which we just did, Rita's Crown, now we can go in and blend with something else.
So what are they going to do with Sea Smoke? They're going to turn that into the next Camus or something?
I think so, yeah. Sea Smoke probably is.
I think it was already headed that direction. I mean, let's face it, the wines are infinitely different than they were when they first came out and Chris was making them.
Yeah, she did a good job. And the current winemaker, Dawn, I think does a good job.
But Chris just passed, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, she was great. I love her and her husband.
Bruno.
Bruno's great. Yeah. They are one of the funnest couples, in the area, and it's too bad she was fairly young. She did a great job with Sea Smoke, obviously put them on the map. Don's been there for a long time, has done a good job. They probably do about 25,000 cases. So we'll see what happens when they go higher. But yeah, it's unfortunate. It really it put a little dagger in my heart to see that happen.
Because there was really nobody big in the area before that, right? I mean, it's all kind of always been this tight-knit group of people,
Yeah.
Half of them worked at Zaca Mesa at one point in time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's more of a farming, good old, boy club in some ways. And so when you got the big, you've had Foley in the area, but when you get somebody big coming in and buying an iconic brand, I feel bad for the people that worked at Sea Smoke, which I know a lot of them still do, and they're doing a great job. But I know the GM, I believe, he ended up leaving right after. And so, the culture changes and, the whole vibe changes. So it's sad to see that that's how it went. I mean, I can understand that, but that's something that I hope I will never do if I ever sell, which I don't plan on selling. But, I wouldn't... I don't want to sell out. So.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And finally, let's talk about some favorite restaurants in Santa Barbara. So people are out, they're visiting wine country. Where should they go eat? Yeah,
it's gotten a lot better over the last probably 15 years. And Bettina is a great spot.
Okay.
Bettina in Montecito does an amazing job. San Isidro Ranch is always amazing.
Gold standard.
Gold standard for sure. Barbareño is a favorite of mine. They've been around about 6-7 years now, and they really do a lot of great stuff. They're kind of under the radar. Barbareño and... I'm trying to think what else is. So a couple great Mexican places, Cucina, something or another. I'll think of it in a minute. But some great, really different Mexican time.
Well, I mean, you could obviously drive down Millpass and blindly point out any of a dozen places.
Roberta's or one of those. There's maybe it's not Roberta's, but there's a few that are, really, really, and I forget the name all of a sudden, but it's in the Santa Barbara public market.
Right.
And it's amazing. Yeah, it's when I go to that market, I'm always drawn to that place. So.
Well, cool. Hey, man, it's been a pleasure. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
So let's drink some Liquid Farm.
Let's do it.
Let's go out and sell some wine.
I like it. Thanks, Rick.
All right, buddy.
Keep that one going all day.
Yeah, that's good.
Good job.
All right, cool. Thanks, brother.